Welcome to CyberPod World, the ultimate podcasting panel in Las Vegas. I'm really excited to be here. We have a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover. We have some questions here. Some ground rules. Please ask questions at the end of the session because we wanted to do this for you, for the podcasters and the new podcasters, veteran ones who want to create podcasts, to ask us questions because we've created some pretty cool platforms for the cybersecurity industry, and we wanted to really do this to share our experiences and also learn from each other. So we're going to be asking questions throughout the session. To kick it off, let's go through the backstory. Meryl and I have a little bit of a story to share on how we created this wonderful panel and this cool octopus, which, thank you, AI. So, yeah, you want to kick it off?
You had an idea for a product. You were like, wouldn't it be so cool if we could all learn from the best, or some of the most visible? And I had an idea for a domain. She promptly stole it and bought it. I was like, oh no, it's gone. Like, I just vetted all this branding and someone stole it.
And I was like, no, it was me. It was me.
I was like, thanks, perfect business partners. And we really just wanted to put CyberPod World together because we wanted to be curated towards cyber podcasters for and by cyber podcasters, because it's kind of a different beast that we talk about. So that was the idea, the inspiration. I was like, we should actually dev this.
Yeah.
And here we are today.
Yeah, and we follow some pretty great podcasts and some pretty cool creators. And I said, how cool would it be to bring them together? We're all going to be at Hacker Summer Camp. Here we are. Reached out to some of the best, I think. I follow everybody. I'm like fangirling right now, by the way. Holy moly. So we have some great folks here. I want to get into it. So let's go around the table here. Tell me who you are, what do you do, and why in the hell podcasting?
Why don't we start with Bare Knuckles Brass Tacks?
Yeah, Bare Knuckles Brass Tacks, everybody.
All right, George Comedy, co-founder, co-host, Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks. We started, I guess, we're 1 year anniversary. Black Hat last year. And we saw a need to talk about trust issues between vendors. I'm George on the product side, and buyers.
I mean, look, like, first of all, hi, my name's George Alcora. I'm also a co-founder, co-host of Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks. I am also a real living active duty CISO. Woo. God help us all. So, so kind of the way George, I guess, summarized the whole thing, it's a conversation that's still continuing. So the way George and I met was sort of organic through LinkedIn. We were kind of following in circle around each other. George is working like kind of a typical BD hustle, just like looking at interesting people. I was trying to do a lot of thought leadership, if I could speak. Eventually, we met up at Black Hat, and it was at the end of my day. I was exhausted from doing the trade show all day. I showed up to George's event with like 10 minutes to spare. I had enough time to get a drink. We had like a 5-minute conversation of like, hey dude, cool. So like, there's the thing. There's the VIP guy, Nico, that was presenting. Can we just like skip the song and dance? Like, do you want to just give me your like material? I'll give it to my team if they're interested. And then out of that, like, do you want to just like hang out and have a drink?
It was the easiest conversation.
That like, honestly, it was just like, I like you as a dude. I'll check your product. If it's actually valuable, we'll take it back and we'll go through the steps. Otherwise, like, do I actually like you? Do I actually trust you? And that's been the whole point of our conversation. And it's been carried on into a show, which ended up turning into meeting all of you folks, which was insane because you guys are way cool. I think you're way cooler than me. I still can't believe George hangs out with me every week. But the fact of the matter is that we're connected with this community of brilliant, creative minds who are actively professionals in the industry. I got to see our friend Meryl win a massive world award that we talked about last night. Huge. And we're here, so thank you, Meryl. Thank you, Danny, for putting this together.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Hacker Valley Media.
Thank you. I'm Ron Eddings, co-founder and executive producer at Hacker Valley Media. I've been in cybersecurity my entire career. Started in 2010, started with offensive ops, did a lot of security automation. And me and Chris, we go way back. The question was, why podcasting? I didn't know I was getting into podcasting. We just wanted to have a conversation that was recorded. We started with these two unflattering angles of ourselves, pointed up to like the under chin.
Yeah, really bad. Looking up your nostril.
Yeah.
Great.
So, we never stopped though. We were like, let's just continue to do this every week. And then over time, we realized we were building a podcast. Then we started to explore more. We started doing videos, doing video series, and really the sky's the limit now.
Yeah, I'm Chris Cochran. I do way too much. I'm an advisory CISO, chief evangelist, co-founder of Hacker Valley. Just got elected to the Podcast Academy Board of Governors. So appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, podcasting is my life. I would say content creation, storytelling is my life. I realized what really solidified why podcasting, why even content creation in general, is because I love capturing human moments. That's why I'm always snapping pictures. I'm like, hey, let's get this picture, because you just never know when things are going to change. I just lost my father-in-law, who I was really close to last year. And 3 days before he went into the hospital and his faculties just completely went away, I noticed something was wrong, and I said, hey, have you ever heard your voice before? And he was like, no. I was like, let's go in the studio. So we go in the studio. I just cut the mic on, and I'm just like asking him to tell the stories. He's a storyteller. Just tell all the stories that you love to tell. 3 days later, he was in the hospital. His mind was completely gone. It was the last time that he would tell those stories. And what was beautiful, I was able to condense it down, edit it up, and I was able to give it to his son, because he's never been one of those mushy guys to say how proud he is of his kids. But I was able to capture that moment and share that with my wife and her brother and even his wife. And so that was probably one of the biggest moments in my life, to know that capturing human moments is really what matters.
We are the Cyber Queens.
I'm going to tell the story of the Cyber Queens. Well, I'll start off. My name is Erica Eakins. I have been in cybersecurity since 2011. I came in on the sales side, so I worked on the reseller side, the vendor side, and now I'm actually starting a consulting firm, female board, complete female board, and minority led. So coming to you soon. I'm the CEO and co-founder. I'm going to tell the story of the Cyber Queens because it's kind of interesting. Last year, the Cyber Queens started from a conversation on LinkedIn. It was between myself and a previous co-host and co-founder that has gone off to do her own things. And it started with a post that said, "Where are all the women in cyber?" And then from that, me and that other, the previous co-host, we started talking. She actually introduced me to Meryl, and this is historical because this is the first time we've all been in person together.
Yeah.
So we met via LinkedIn, and I recognized the gender gap in cyber a long time ago, because the Cyber Queens, we aim to close the gender gap, the minority gap, the LGBTQIA plus gap in cyber. Even though I'm on the sales side, I've always been the only woman on my team. I've always been the diversity hire. I've always gotten the interview because I'm a woman and not always hired. And it's a problem. And it's very toxic on the sales side. My last sales job was with vendors and startups, and I'm aiming to change that. But the Cyber Queens, we also want to speak to Gen Z and Gen Alpha to come into cyber, because I was a career changer. I did bartending, I was doing project management before this, and then I fell into sales and realized that I'm actually a nerd at heart, and I'm a technical sales rep. It's taken me a long time to admit that I'm technical. They've been, my counselors, but excited to be here. Hopefully we're making changes, and the rest of the queens can introduce themselves. Okay, yeah. So Amber DeVilbiss. I am one of the amazing cyber queens out here. I got into this because Erica reached out to me one day and was like, "Hey, you've seen our podcast. This is amazing. We need you to be on here," because we do a lot of things. Actually, Erica and I go back a little bit further. We used to work together. I was her engineer for a long time. So she was like, "Hey, you believe in, kind of closing that gap and diversifying this field and industry." So I joined, even though I am probably the last person that would ever be on a podcast because I'm terrified of public speaking. But through that, I've gained Meryl as an amazing friend, and Erica, of course. And it's just been really cool. I do a lot of stuff too. So I have a nonprofit for kids. Actually, all three of us are also the board members for that, called Teach Kids Tech. And I wrote a kids book, so there's that. And they're, just momming it out, being
Yeah.
here,
Amazing.
here with our besties that we've all
Yeah.
met through podcasting. So
Yeah,
it's
so
exciting.
it's been great.
Yeah, the woman who needs no introduction.
Right, for real.
I'm Meryl Vernon, and I am the most recent winner of Cybersecurity Woman of the Year, Hacker of the Year.
Yeah.
Yes, girl.
Own it.
Long line of legends in that award, Alyssa included. So very thrilled, very honored to have received that. And I am known as the girl who got into cyber completely untechnically 4 years ago. I was a non-technical person completely. And when I got approached to start the Cyber Queens, I was inspired because I am constantly telling people to believe in their own potential, be a mid-career pivoter, start over at any point in time in life. When I came to cyber, I was a single mom in my 30s living with my parents. So, you know, cyber really changed my life, and I just know that the industry has so much to offer, and I want as many women to change their own lives as possible by joining us here. When we invited Amber to be on, I had admired her for so long. I'm like, you're one of those women that I admire. And, you know, it's opened up so many doors to other podcasters and creatives and opportunities. So that's where Cyber Queens came from.
Nice.
Yeah.
Alyssa.
My purple-haired friend over here.
So I'm Melissa Knight. We do stuff, a lot of stuff. I feel like the old woman here. I started in cybersecurity in 1999.
Girl.
Yeah, this is all gray. That's actually why it's purple, because it's gray.
Make it purple.
Make it rain.
So I started my first podcast, I think around 2010, 2011, when I was living in Germany, wanting to interview CISOs on the other side of the Atlantic to see how different their jobs were, their RACI charts were for CISOs in a European country. And it was called Leet Speak. And it's actually, the archived shows are still on Libsyn. I have lost track of the number of shows we've started at this point. But, you know, we have night TV on YouTube, you know, started out with audio as an audio podcast and then moved into video. And now have a show with my wife, a show for just myself. And I feel kind of like the poser here right now because I'm a content creator who used to work in cybersecurity. I've retired my hoodie and am now in working in Hollywood as a director and film producer and TV producer. So our shows, K2, which I run with my wife Mel, as well as Behind the Lens, are now shows around Hollywood. And even in the diversity challenges that are in Hollywood that a lot of people don't really know much about. Yeah. There's a huge lack of representation for women and LGBTQ in Hollywood. But I'm very grateful to be here today.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Last but certainly not least.
What's interesting, all partnerships, like all collabs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Minus me. I mean, I guess.
That's all you need. Danny.
All right, I'm Daniel Wolf, CEO and founder of Audience First, which actually started as a podcast. Now it's a customer research agency for cybersecurity startups, and a podcast still going. Why podcasting? It started out of massive frustration. Who's a marketer in the house? Any marketers here? Marketers?
Well,
Okay.
sales.
Digital marketers?
Yeah.
Kind of. We're all digital. It's a digital world. So I was working on the vendor side, stuck behind a keyboard. I couldn't go to events. I couldn't talk to buyers. I couldn't talk to people. And I got really lonely. And SEO articles weren't working to create demand and brand awareness. PPC wasn't working to create brand and demand. So I was like, oh, what if we like start a podcast? I don't have metrics. I don't know. So in-house, hooked up with one of our customers, and we created a podcast, and it was like, I did not look back from there. We created a lot of demand and brand awareness and advocacy with our customers, and I just like fell in love with video podcasting. I fell in love with talking to people. It sparked my creative energy. You know, I'm an artist by, I'm just an artist since I was a kid. Like to draw, like to do digital media, and so it just fit naturally. And from there, I created 3 podcasts.
I don't know anyone here who only does one thing.
Yeah,
I think
it's crazy.
creatives in general just have their fingers in multiple things.
And yeah, I just realized that it was really, really good. Black Hat last year was a lot of fun. We did some podcasting there, and I realized, well, I'm onto something. Literally, like right after Black Hat, quit my job and went all in on Audience First.
Yep, and it's our friendversary.
And yes, it's our friend anniversary because we met at
also
Black
met at
Hat
Black
last
Hat.
year. A lot of
Nice.
anniversaries.
Nice.
So it was a really interesting journey, scary as hell journey, but I wouldn't do it differently. And it's really like full circle and really great to be sitting here with all of you and all of you in the crowd. Thank you for coming. I do want to maybe take a break to get water because I know a lot of us are parched.
When I think about content, storytelling, it's really like two halves of the same coin. On one side, you have the audience, right? Who are you speaking to? And on this side, you have the message. Like, what do you have to say that will resonate, evoke emotion? How did you all find the message in your shows?
For us, our goal was very clear for what we wanted to say. But when they came to me, I said, we have to really define this out. I'm a marketer, and I said we have to define what makes us different. We have to define where and how we will deliver the message based on who we want to hear it. And we started off with an audience of like exclusively Gen Z, and it actually resonates more with practitioners and mid-career pivoters, which has been phenomenal. But we found our way to that message by saying, we don't want to just keep it all technical and all acronyms and like make the language exclusive. We used inclusive language. We defined our core values like radical transparency and inclusivity. And that's really where our messaging came from.
And we did a lot of research, and where we started is not where we are today, like you said, because we went to Gen Z to speak to them. But this is resonating with a lot of people that are trying to get into cyber. Getting into cyber is tough. And I was like a fanatic about getting all these acronyms explained. I have a whole entire glossary. So if anybody's interested, I will share this glossary because the acronyms, it's insane. And anytime we talk about stuff, we have to explain it. So you have to always constantly like tweak and define things, but it has been a blast so far. Our 1-year anniversary is September 7th. I had to confirm that with you. And our following is just, it's interesting, the amount of people from backgrounds, and I have people in New Zealand reaching out to me because they want Amber's book, and I'm sending them copies. She doesn't even know this, but I just do this, without asking her at this point. But
We're all learning.
Their daughters want to get into cyber, and it's different over in New Zealand versus here, and we have to be so general sometimes, but also so technical because of the audience that we've created. And we will be on ITSP magazine soon. We're going to be on their platform, so that's another audience that we're going to be speaking to. And it's been a lot of fun, and the content is great. We used to actually do recordings on Sundays for hours, and then we decided that we were going to do lives because the audience is better. You get better traction, engagement for us.
But when it came to the messaging, there are so many breaking in podcasts out there. Like there's a lot of getting into cyber podcasts. And I was like, what's going to make us different? And we wanted to lean into our point of view and the struggles and strategies that we as women in this field have employed and show other women that they can be successful, because sometimes it takes an example to follow. And that's who we want to be. Just want to inspire our daughters to be here.
Because we're all single parents or mothers. So.
Well, we were.
I'd like to chime in actually, because it stems from that initial frustration that I was telling you about. I didn't want to feel that anymore. Like I was done feeling like I was left in the dark. And I remember I was in a Slack group. I went on to some, meet and greet, like virtual meet and greet, lunch and learn with some marketers, and listened to them doing things that were pissing off buyers. Like I knew they were pissing off buyers, and I was just like, why? Like what? Okay, I gotta go. Bye. And then, and then I remember I don't want to feel that way anymore. And I clearly see that folks. How do I put myself in their shoes and create a space where I could give them insight, not from me. Like I don't want to be another marketer telling them what to do. I want the buyer to tell me what to do. Yep. So I was just like, why don't I just get brutally honest insight that nobody's talking about in the industry straight to the folks that need to hear it? And then from there, it was just like no looking back. It really resonated. And what was a frustration turned out to be a blessing, because I get to vent on the podcast. The buyers get to vent on the podcast, so it's very cathartic.
I'm a buyer who vents.
And
I vent.
And I realized after doing research myself as well, because this is something that you got to do when you create a podcast. You got to do a little bit of legwork, a little bit of research. That nobody else was really doing this consistently. I also realized that marketers weren't doing customer research consistently, which is a challenge in and of itself. which created this wonderful audience of marketers, but then salespeople, but then also security practitioners. So I have these 3 wonderful segments that are like totally in for the mission of providing research, providing insight, and I know that that's lacking based off of research in the industry, that the buyer research, the market research, all that kind of stuff. So I really niched down and honed in on one thing, which was research. That's it. Insight, honest insight, and used really like power words in that message as well, which kind of created that emotion for folks who feel that bleeding neck challenge. I always say that on the podcast. So focus on one message, one audience, and then see how it resonates and shift from there. So
Yeah, speaking of frustration and brutality,
Favorite things.
I was a bit more seat of the pants. I WhatsApped George, and I was like, look, man, this thing writes itself. You're George on the buyer side, I'm George on the product side. We're both pissed off about things. We got to make this happen. So the idea of bare knuckles was just really brutally honest, and it was done outside the purview of my job, so I got to slap an explicit rating on it, because we're like, there's some bullshit going on, and we're going to talk about it. But then, like, let's not admire the problem, so we got brass tacks. Like, how can we talk about, like, if we say don't do this, what do you do instead? And it's been really good. It's been really well received, and we talked to sellers, we talked to marketers recently. We've gotten on the VC side, which was really a big win to understand like what are the pressures that people are facing, and maybe drifting into a little bit go to market. But the understanding is always examine that divide, because as you say, it's about people, and we sort of get enamored with tech, and there's like a lot of cultural inertia of hype, FUD, whatever. But at the end of the day, if he's going to buy my product, there's got to be that trust, and just trying to buzzword kung fu my way through isn't going to get to a signed SOW. Right?
They slapped real fast.
Well, so it's funny because with the actual, so when George met me last year, like I'm still an active like competitive Muay Thai fighter. So like my face was messed up because I just fought. My nose was broken. I had a massive shiner, and that's the condition I met George in.
I want you to be my friend.
Yeah.
To protect me.
Yeah, so just for me being kind of living that lifestyle a little bit as a practitioner, as an executive, like my upbringing is all blue collar, right? And George is kind of the same way. So I came up working in the Army. I came up working in bars. I learned how to deal with people. Security. I'm passionate about security. I love security. George and I both love security. But we were talking about this before the recording. We're all creative personalities. We do a dozen different things at any time. This security thing is just a chapter in my life. It's not going to define who I am. It's not going to define George. So we can make our time in this experience as insufferable, or as more tolerable, as possible, right? Less insufferable. Because most of our WhatsApp messages is like, hey man, look at this stupid pitch that this like BDR tried to cold open me with. There is an obscene amount of shit talk that is exchanged between George and I.
Yeah, fair warning. If you cold DM us, we're gonna talk about it.
why aren't you submitting to WTF?
Oh, we should.
Yeah, we'll have a crossover.
This is how ideas are born.
Yeah, collaboration.
But the key thing was like, look, I really believe in the power of genuine connections. So when George and I started this thing up, it was about, hey, let's actually be friends. Let's make this thing as approachable as possible. You guys are like so impressive because you think things through and you research things heavily, and you guys have such well thought out plans for it. My thing was like, hey, dude, I'm gonna get a little bit buzzed and let's just talk about some shit that we like piss us off this week, and then somehow people actually care.
Yeah.
That's the
crazy
I think
part.
the surprising thing was I thought we were kicking the hornet's nest, and then it turned out more people, both on the sales side, they sort of came out and they were like, I've been thinking about this, but like I can't say anything because of my CRO, or I've been making this argument, and I was like, oh, there is a rich vein here that we need to talk about.
I'm impressed with y'all because, like you were saying, sounds like a lot of planning. We didn't plan at all. We just decided to see what happened on the first episode that we did. We ended up talking about cybersecurity alchemy. How do you take nothing and turn it into something valuable? We talked about programming, transforming your career. And one of the things that we realized was there was a lot of content about the bits and bytes of cybersecurity and technology, but there wasn't really like a good old-fashioned talk show. People just having a conversation, talking about what they do, why they love it. And that's been kind of the genesis behind our show, is highlighting the person, the people, but also us just exploring the creation side. How can we tell a better story? How can we up our game? We've done a lot of podcasts. Chris has even done one where he was doing some voice acting.
Perfect.
And we've done web series. We did one on crypto as well, and also produce other people's podcasts. And out of all of it, what I've noticed is a great plan does go a long way, but you have to leave the room for creativity, for that message to develop and change over time.
I think it's like a 20-80, like 80 plan, 20% experimentation, see if it works, and then scale it up.
Yep.
I will say on the micro, we didn't have a lot of plans, but on the macro scale, the show really came from our experience living in the house. So when I was going from Atlanta to California, I just got the job at Netflix. I had 2 months of corporate housing, and then I still had like 3 months before my family was going to come out to meet with me. And I was like, hey, Ron, hey, man, I'm coming out there. You got a place to stay? Like, hey, actually, we just got this house. It's just me and another guy. I moved in, and we had another friend move in as well. We got 4 minority men, like in their 30s, and all we're doing is we're focused on cybersecurity, technology, personal growth and development. We would bring a yoga instructor on Wednesdays. We would do breathing exercises with Ron on Sunday. And I was like, I've never seen an experience like this, like for anybody. Like there's no way, even now, I got 3 kids, I got 3 daughters. There's no way I could, all right, I'm gonna be gone for, 6 months, everybody, for personal growth and development. But I was like, how do we share this experience with other people? How do we share like the knowledge, the readings, the books, the other wisdom that other people have, their stories with other people? Because that's where that flavor of personal growth, caring about people, self-actualizing yourself. So at the micro scale, by the seat of our pants every freaking time. It's unbelievable.
You're my worst
Yeah. But on the macro,
That's
it's very
right
intentional.
Like I gotta say though, some of the ad hoc stories. So I will never forget when we had Erica on, and we were talking about the difficulties of the female experience in our industry, and we like knew about it, kind of know about it, but then Erica talked about firsthand what she went through, and I've never forgotten about that sense, because some of the stuff is just like, dude, I'm like, I want to go punch these dudes out, man. What the fuck was that? Like, it's just like active, like in a sales session, getting actively sexually harassed. I'm like, who the hell wants to join that industry?
Right.
Like, we needed a platform for this.
Also, one of our most listened to episodes.
I was going to say it's the most listened to episode, and I didn't want to bring out the negative, but it is a challenge that women still face today. I still get harassed. I still get sexual comments. I still have people doing stuff. It's happened to her. I'm sure it's happened to, most of the ladies, but it is still such a welcoming industry, because people are like, well, why, if all this has happened, why are you still here? I lived in my car after I had my first child. I had a kid at 18. I come from a very poor family. This industry has given me a life that I've never had, because for one, I have made a lot of money. Sales, there's a lot of money, but I've identified a bunch of problems, and it's okay to speak out about this. And a lot of women or minorities or the LGBTQIA community, everybody's in a closet. And I was so raw with you guys, and I still get approached today about your episode. And I love you guys. I love all of you guys. But that episode actually has changed me a little bit, because I was finally relieved to be able to tell my story. And of course I get, people still being rude, but my messaging is to keep pushing. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't let the haters and the roadblocks, and I've talked to you about the sales roadblocks. They're terrible. And you guys know how I feel about the vendor, the sales on the vendor side, but dealing with that and then dealing with your day-to-day, it's okay to have these things happen and keep pushing. I've been laid off 3 times in the last 3 years. And as a salesperson, I decided to start a company. So I'm like, you know what? We need more of this raw and support system. I talked to one of your previous guests, and he's an advocate for women, Mike. I won't mention his last name, but he's a CISO, and he's like, what do I do? How do I continue to be an ally for women and minorities? So we need more allies. We need more supporters.
I think just before kicking it off to you, Alyssa, is just like, there's so much power in vulnerability. There's so much power in using those raw moments to create your message, right? To
Make
formulate.
make your mess your message.
Yeah, basically. What about you, Alyssa?
So for me, I wanted a show that demonstrated what could happen if you weren't using a particular product.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tell the story of being a hacker, showing what can happen if a particular solution wasn't being used.
Right.
So that's what got me into hacking Bluetooth locks, got me into hacking APIs, got me into hacking banks, got me into hacking cars.
Everything.
So, I wanted to show. Now, the thing about my show, which was different, is that every single show was, sponsored by a vendor. And so, I would show, as a hacker, from a hacker's perspective, how easy it was to do something to show why you needed a product versus what it did and how it works. As far as the representation, I look back and wish I could have done a lot of things differently. When I started my show, I didn't want to talk about being transgendered because I didn't want it to be my flag. Now, before you want to key my car for saying that, it's not that I was embarrassed for being trans. I just didn't want it to be my narrative. I just wanted to be a woman with a podcast, and so it's really easy to go down that rabbit hole and go on Twitter and go on LinkedIn and talk about how awful it is and how many things I've experienced on the negative side of being trans in a sales call, in a sales meeting, trying to get a contract, whatever, because, I'm trans. But I felt like there was so much of that already out there that I wanted to be a glasses half full kind of thing. Now, what happened was I read the story of the 13-year-old trans girl who threw herself in front of oncoming traffic because her Mormon parents didn't agree with her being trans. So one of the most common things that I would get on DMs was, because I'm trans, is there even a place for me with a white collar job? And so I decided that when she died, that it was my responsibility as an influencer to start flying that flag and say, hey, look, okay, I want everyone to understand I'm going to come out publicly that I am transgendered. And I transitioned, in 2008. And I want you to know that there's a place for you in corporate America, that, the adult entertainment industry isn't the only job available to you just because you're trans. And so I wanted them to know that, look at everything I've done in selling these companies and doing these things that I've done, even though I'm trans. It's just such a small part of me. So I regret not doing that sooner. I don't know, I have to this day parents that reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, my child is trans and I just want to say thanks. We watch your videos together and I want her to know that, there's a future for her.
Yeah.
And that has been my why. And it's what kept me making every new episode.
That's awesome.
Speaking of all the unpopular opinions we have and kicking hornets' nests and things like that, it's not easy to put a podcast out there. It's not easy to have an opinion and think that other people will take to it. Podcasting is not as glamorous and easy as it looks. So what are some of the challenges and L's that you've taken and how did you overcome them during your podcasting journey?
Yeah, I would say one of the things I wouldn't say it's an L. It's definitely a win, but in the middle of it, it feels like an L. Is we do way too much. So we've probably created 12 different podcasts, web series, mini things, animations coming out here really soon. And so just dabbling in so many different things and being spread thin. I know you're the queen of being spread thin over here. You got freaking coffee, you got all kinds of good stuff going on. But I would say that the cool thing about it is we all know about pod fade. Most people, they start a podcast and they stop doing it like 7 episodes in. We must be a glutton for punishment because, we're not just doing one podcast, we're doing multiple things. There's a lot of folks here. But what's really cool about it is that I feel like going through that fire, it just makes you tougher. And it makes you tougher and makes you put more intention and polish into your stuff. So I feel like that even though you might spread yourself too thin to a point where it's not manageable, for some reason it just makes you better at the end of the day sometimes, as long as you're taking care of yourself. But I'll say that's probably one of the things for us.
I think we're all taking the path that Alyssa's taken in some ways. Like, she started with podcasts, you've written books, you've done so much in the content space that I think once you start a podcast, you start learning, like, these L's are really lessons. You start learning about audio. Then you're like, okay, well, like, I'm gonna do a speaking engagement. Then you start developing your speaking. It's like, all right, well, I want to work on my voice, maybe do a little bit of vocal coaching. And I feel like it's just like, podcasting is a great way to up level yourself while building a brand, an awesome message, maybe duking it out.
Well, I think in that conversation, you're also sharing ideas, you're getting ideas.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just self-generates. I mean, we're not professional podcasters and we're doing it in our off time. So I think one of the hardships that we face is just summoning that energy because we're recording at night. And, you know, sometimes our guests are in different time zones and we got to coordinate that. But, you know, it's Thursday night and you're like, put the kids to bed and you're like, game face, like get on and just like bring the energy. And I have found that if you like just belt that intro, like just the act, you can sort of like actualize the energy. And then because if you don't bring it, the guest is like snoozing too. And then and the harder part is if a guest doesn't feel comfortable, like you're starting to get one word answers or one line answers and you're like, I'm running out of questions. I think that's force us to be better listeners, like, and find the thing that kind of unlocks and makes them a little bit more comfortable and draws them out.
I was going to say, I just love what you said about learn from each other, because our lighting game came from Alyssa. She was like, hey, I got you guys. We're like, yeah, we're trying to get our whole setup. So she told us what to do, the equipment to buy, how to set up the room and everything. So yeah, learning from each other is key.
It's all your fault because I learned it from you guys. Now I got
We're sharing around.
Yeah, and we got on a conference call and he's got purple lights behind him. Next time we got on the phone, I was like, look at my purple lights.
I mean, how many times have you and Danny had conversations about our podcast? I mean, you guys are like, have constant therapy sessions because we're ever changing. And we're getting better and better. And one of the challenges is that I've had some people in the industry come to us and say that we man bash. And our podcast is not about man bashing. And we want that kind of feedback because that's one of the harder things is getting feedback. You know, they say that we man bash, but it's not that we man bash. We're talking about the problem. I've actually put myself on a blacklist where companies won't hire me because of this podcast that I do. So if I wanted to go work in sales again for a vendor, I'm told that it's a legal issue because of things I say, and I speak out against the sales process and how the vendors and, you know, Danny and I, we've talked about this with some of your
quite a bit.
And I've had people tell me that, you know, your little girly podcast, what's that going to do for our revenue? I worked for a company, my VP of sales told me that.
Let me tell
but
you.
won't pay to send me to like a black hat. But I've been told that we man bash and that we're just negative, and it's not that we're negative, we're just speaking the truth, because change doesn't happen overnight. And I think that being part of the change is a challenge, but it's also rewarding. You know, and we have some of our audience who just rave. Ray Tierney, I wanna give Ray a shout out. She's transgender, and she, you know, we've inspired her to be more open, and she was in the military back in the 80s, I think. And she shared some of her challenges when she came as a guest. So there is a place for that, and just kind of like doing the balance of like, if you work for somebody, like, how's that going to affect your career? It's hurt me, but I don't care.
My challenges list continues to grow. I was waiting for all of you to say that time when I recorded that show for 2 hours and forgot to hit the record button. Come on, I know one of you has done that.
Or when your wife spills wine on your laptop and loses 5 episodes.
Loses 5 episodes of recording.
Or I'm not telling you that actually storing that much raw video, you need to go buy a NAS. Because you've run out of space to store it. But I mean, you know, I think for me, the challenges have been, I mean, if you look at night TV, right? My original show on YouTube, I explored the more labyrinthine areas of cybersecurity. It was like when I was hacking the August Bluetooth block. A lot of my challenges in the show were always either not getting an exploit to work, or not getting a particular hack to work, or not getting a vendor's product to work that's paying $50,000 to sponsor the episode, right? And you're trying to explain to them, I'm sorry, I can't get your product working, you know, and hopefully not doing that while you're recording your show. But we have had situations where I was demonstrating an attack, and I can't name the company. You can use your imagination on who it was, but we were, they wanted me to say that they detect and prevent 100% of all of the OWASP API security top 10 lists. And so
Can everyone do that?
Snake oil.
And one of the things that we learned is we took a black eye for it and learned, because everything is a learning lesson, right? We learned we needed to put in our sponsorship agreements that we will not say anything that is contrary to the truth about your product. And so it doesn't, and so they felt, well, we're paying you $50,000 per episode, so you need to say what we want you to say. And so we terminated that contract, and we decided we weren't going to work with that vendor anymore. Because they think that just because you're an influencer, that you will say what they want you to say if they're sponsoring.
All you got's your rep.
They can happily say that on What the Fuck Did I Just Read? I mean, we'll rip into it all day.
Yeah, and it's I mean, anytime a vendor would tell me we prevent 100% or 100% false positives, whatever it may be, you always look cross-eyed at that number, because nothing is 100%, right? Yeah. But I mean, it always surprised me what vendors thought they could make you do and say just because they were paying as a sponsor.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, there's no such thing as a turnkey solution. You guys played buzzword bingo specifically on this logic.
Yep.
The second I hear certain things during a pitch, I'm like, you're full of shit. This is done. When can I go do other things? Yep. I think, though, Erica, you brought up a really good point. This is what I was about to say, Chris, earlier. Depending on your position, like when we started our show, I didn't think any of it was controversial, because I was like, I have these conversations with people all the time off the record. And I was like, well, let's just actually put it on the record. And so I started getting like weird pushback from people, because I sit on a bunch of different boards, especially like I'm up in Canada. I sit on a bunch of high level like public sector boards as well. I work with different organizations, and the stereotypical disposition of a CISO or a security executive seems to be almost robotic. And I'm just like, no, dude, have you ever like talked to a real person that's a security practitioner? We're pissed off all the time. We're exhausted. We haven't slept. We're probably kind of hungry. Like we probably haven't showered in a day or two because we have incidents overnight. Like, I'm sorry to say, it's just like, it's a tough go. Yeah. And I think what we all have ultimately tried to capture is humanizing our experience. Yeah. And some people in the industry really seem to have a problem with that, and it trips me out.
Yeah.
They do. Even with a disclaimer, we have a legal disclaimer. Anybody I've worked for, I've told them and went through legal about the podcast, before I worked for them. And they're not listening to the customers and the vendors. I'm sorry. When I'm in sales and the demo doesn't work with a customer, I'm just like, all right, I end the call, because if my stuff doesn't work during a demo, not the call, but I end it, because if it doesn't work during a demo, it's not going to work for the customer. And that's why we didn't take sponsorships, because we refuse to be told what we can and can't do. So we're not monetized partially because of that, but it's whose game do you want to play?
Yeah. And to that effect, we have people working for certain companies and certain vendors who won't let them on the podcast.
Oh yeah, we've run into that. We've run into that.
I want to reiterate something that you said, which is like the key word here is consistency.
Yes.
Like this is a journey. And like when I started podcasting, I was reading all these articles on how to start it and how to create a plan and the metrics that we should be measuring. And I'm like, I'm going to get 5,000 downloads an episode. And I look the next week and it's like 50 downloads an episode. It's like, my mental health, oh God.
George and I celebrate that. What are you talking
about?
I was like,
that actually causes a lot of podcasters to give up.
Exactly.
They're like, well, I want to be a full-time YouTuber.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I want
yeah.
to I want to live off my YouTube channel. It takes time to get there.
A lot of time. I'm not even at. I'll be frank. I'm not even at 500 an episode. But what did I do? So here's how I flipped it, and it was great to see how this impacted the business or just my life. Really, is that I was like, okay, well, my episodes are on average like 40 minutes. Like, who has time to really listen like for 40 minutes? Like, if I were in someone else's shoes, I don't have time to listen to 40 minutes all the time, and I want people to consume my content all the time. So I was like, okay, well, how can I get the golden nuggets out? Like, how can I curate my own content? And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna take the episode, I'm gonna write out just a quick 3-minute summary.
Yeah.
Like, really invested in the written content because people have 5 minutes to just skim. They skim, and that brought in 3,000, visits, a month per episode. So imagine you're doing like 4 episodes a month. That's 12,000 visits to your website, and then your own website created a newsletter, created social content, and that like. I maxed out all the channels I could from the core content, which was the audio and the
That's
video.
the engine.
That's the engine. And then supplement in different ways that people want to consume content. Turn that into a win, which eventually turned this into a business, which we'll get into later, a little bit later.
And
actually.
another thing that I tell people, especially in the beginning, is like have an ulterior motive for the content that you're creating.
Yeah.
Like do it for the love of the game. If you're doing it for the likes, you're doing it for the comments, it's probably not going to happen early, if at all. So I loved and we loved podcasting because we had an opportunity to have deep conversations with really intelligent people.
Yes.
And I'll do that for free. I'll do that if no one's listening to it. It's just a byproduct of capturing it and putting out that people get to enjoy it.
So I think one of the most surprising things about podcasting is we've all talked about a desire to have conversations, to connect, but it's what came out of that was surprising, these ancillary benefits to personal and business life. So I'll say, for example, I was running a podcast for a vendor, and the relationships that I built turned out to be, one, very genuine and trusted, but they allowed for things like we did an event in Colorado because FSISAC was having their annual conference, but I could invite friends that I had met to collaborate on these events, which had a material impact on the business of the vendor, able to generate pipeline, and all through that, also, people coming to me, asking me to do things. It was just completely unexpected, and it wasn't the ulterior motive. I was just having these conversations. But that's just something I didn't anticipate. So I'm curious for everyone here if you've seen other impacts to your personal or business lives as a result of your presence. I know, Erica, you were talking about it cutting in the other way, but are there any other ways that it's come back to you?
All of you. We were already besties, Amber and I, but Meryl is one of my best friends. We fight like sisters at times. It's only her and I that fight. Amber stays out of it, but I love her to death. But it has actually given me the courage to start my own company and know that I have people in my corner, and these relationships are going to be forever. And I'm excited to meet you. I'm totally fangirling right now, by the way. So your story completely inspired me. I had tears in my eyes, and it's like that for some of our guests. And it's just the friendships that I'm building, whether I stay in this industry forever or not. I have lasting friendships and potential business opportunities from it.
Yeah.
We can always move into coffee if it doesn't work out. We'll hire you.
All right, there you go. I'm down. Let's go.
And speaking of that, I think that's one of the things that I realized is that I'm not just one-dimensioned. Like starting in cybersecurity, that's all I knew. That's what I felt like I could do over and over again. But until trying out podcasts, I didn't know that I could make it into another field. And I think it's very empowering to have that.
Absolutely.
Be a media person. Yeah, I think, for me, and this kind of touches on a little bit what was discussed earlier, is that I feel like a lot of podcasters who want to start a podcast or that have one already need to understand how important developing your own personal brand is, in order to understand that the success of your show is actually predicated on what you do with your personal brand, meaning what you go out on social media and say. I'm astonished with some of the things that I've seen some podcasters say, not realizing that what they say is emblematic of their show and their podcast, and whether or not a vendor will want to sponsor that show, or people will want to subscribe and listen. I've seen mass unsubscriptions from someone just posting something on LinkedIn when they weren't fully thinking before they posted it. And I mean, we all have those days where we just want to go on LinkedIn or Twitter or X, and just just rant, and we're all, one of the best quotes I've ever heard is a lot of people I think get it wrong, where they say humans are, we're not emotional creatures, that we're just, sometimes we have these emotional outbursts. But the best quote ever is that humans are 100% emotional all the time, and we're actually trying to keep that under wraps. And so, I think people need to understand that if you are a media personality, I mean, you have a podcast, you have a vlog, whatever it may be, that what you say has a direct reflection on your show, and whether or not you can bring in sponsors or keep subscribers. That's super important.
Yeah, it's not enough to just identify an audience and give a message. It's not enough to just pontificate. You have to make sure that you are doing it in an authentic way, and that you're in yourself, and
That's what I was gonna say.
yeah.
I was gonna say, like, build it and they will come. I'm like the opposite of Meryl in every single aspect, which is great, right? We have a good dynamic, but I also think that it's somebody once told me, it's like, my videos, they're not high quality, nothing like what you guys are doing. It's just kind of on my iPhone. And, somebody said, well, that I think is what actually got the followers you have, because people want to see real and they want to see you mess up. That's why every time I go on the show, it's like a standing joke, right? Because I'm like, I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to say something wrong. I'm going to do something wrong. My water's going to fall. My dogs are going to bark. And I think for a lot of people that watch what we do, sometimes that resonates with them, right? They're like, oh, it's not this like perfectly made commercial where everything, like lights, camera, action, everything's solid, right? It's like, oh, there's Amber again. She actually showed up today, and she's got half of herself together. So, and I think just being authentic and showing up as who you are, like there's, I kind of ride the fine line. I'm more of a rebel of sorts. So there's actually a lot of people in this room today that even mentioned, I couldn't, even like you said with Netflix, you couldn't be on a podcast without getting vetted or whatever. And my first answer to you was, well, then I would just leave. I would just leave whatever company that is, because I'm doing me, unapologetically. And I don't know. I think being, my parents have always kind of pushed back and been like, stop doing this, stop doing it. Like my mom will always hug me and she'd go, stop making TikToks, sweetie, okay? Thank you. Because, she's like, you're making waves, you're getting like noticed, and I don't like the attention and blah, blah, and it could be bad, it could be good. But for me, I also think when you put your authentic self out there, you draw in the right audience, you know what I mean? So sometimes your audience, like you strive for like a certain audience, but really, I think when you're most comfortable being who you are in your own skin, that's when you're going to get the right people surrounding you, and then it's just going to help you grow. And because growing does, challenges do bring growth, but so does having like a sense of comfort where you feel like you can continue and have that consistency with it. So
I agree. I think, and sorry, I think you were going to say something, but I just want to quickly expound on what you had just said. It is really important that you just hit that record button. A lot of people have reached out to me like, I want to start a podcast, but I can't afford an Arri camera. I can't afford a Red camera. I can't start my show until I buy one of those, or Aperture lighting equipment, or Sennheiser microphones. At the end of the day, we have a full camera crew. No offense, crew. We have an entire camera crew in our pocket, and you guys have to, guys and gals and everyone in between, you have to understand there have been entire movies, including movies like Tangerine, that were filmed on an iPhone. Entire films, feature films that were filmed on an iPhone. So what you need to understand is that one thing that your audience will not put up with is bad audio. You could have the cheapest, crappiest camera that you bought from Best Buy for $9.99, but as long as you have good audio, you just put headphones on and listen to bad audio and tell me how long you're going to listen to it. You're gonna stop listening. That's one thing that we can. So I agree with you. I mean, even if you have just an iPhone, just invest in a good mic. And I feel like this is gonna sound really bitchy, but I feel sorry. I feel like no one really has an excuse these days to have bad audio because of AI. You can go into your video editor and using AI, they all have them built in now that will eliminate background sound. we could have recorded this entire thing with the microphones on our iPhones and used the post-production software.
Tell me.
I'm sorry.
Bro, I feel so called out though, man.
So,
The
you know,
early
so I
episode
mean,
fish
my
bowls?
point being is that, you know, you don't have to look like a Marvel Studios set in order to start your own podcast. Get your iPhone out, just like you said, hit the record button and go.
The best advice I got from a guest who actually declined to come on my podcast, he told me, record 25 episodes first and then talk to me. Because he wanted to see the consistency before he actually committed to coming on the show. Yeah. And that drove me to record 25 episodes.
And then not invite him?
But that's because the podcast changed dramatically. Like by 25 episodes, I knew who my audience was. I knew who my guest was, which is super important. Who are your guests? Like you need to define that too. And then, I mean, he just wasn't a fit anymore. And then audio improved, video improved. It went down like for a while, but.
And I was just joking with George about it. The first couple episodes we had, like, hey, like I'm tired, I'm busy. Like when I had like the first microphone, like I bought a Yeti. I didn't even set it up properly. And so our first few episodes, I sound like I'm in a fishbowl. It was terrible, just garbage, absolute garbage. I don't know how people even followed us. Thankfully, George is cool and like people listen to George. But like it took probably 10 or 15 episodes to get it right.
I was adamant that we were going to get that sound fixed.
Yeah, but I was that guy. Like I was that loser.
You're the unsung hero.
I was that loser. I still have a Yeti, so I'm just gonna full
Just
disclosure.
But you know what? But still, you should be applauded for at least hitting that record button.
Yeah.
You still recorded your shows, and at the end of the day, it's really not the trolls, because there'll always be trolls. Even if you have an Arri camera and you have Sennheiser mics, whatever, there will always be trolls. But at least you hit that record button, and just remember, most of the people, 99.9% of the people that will troll you, don't have a single YouTube video uploaded. They're usually the people that don't have any content out there because they're afraid of running into people like themselves.
I just wanted to touch on the benefits real quick, because I honestly believe like creating content, whether it's podcasts, videos, whatever, is honestly a cheat code for life. Because even just sitting amongst you here, right? You both put out incredible research. I was able to be a part of that, right? And share that with our
We've all been like.
Exactly. To being able
like
to
podcast test.
be at 2 different night studio premieres, you know, being there for your special night, being there last night, right? I've gotten to watch you grow and just mature as a person, as a cybersecurity practitioner, and to see you like get that award, right? Hacker of the Year, and to be able to capture it on the camera and be able to share that for Sarah and your mom and all that good stuff. I mean, just being able to be a part of that. And this guy, I was, not only was I a part of his baby shower, but I was the guy that married him and his wife, right? So all those things are awesome. Going a little deeper, we work with our wives. Our wives are in the company. We're doing this together. It's a family-run business. Shout out to the wives. But then you go even a layer deeper, you go down to your person, and having conversations on record, even having conversations on the side with other creators. You learn through osmosis. You start to pick up on the habits of other people, right? They say you're the sum of the 5 people that you're closest to. Well, the people that are closest to me are creators, right? It's all of you. And so I have grown as a person by leaps and bounds by doing content. And I would recommend anybody that wants to grow as a person and self-actualize and just change the game, get into content and work with awesome people.
I want to echo that. I mean, this podcasting, video podcasting has changed my life forever. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur now, which I never thought I would like open an agency right after Black Hat last year. I never thought as a marketer that I'd establish relationships with like C-level executives, like deep friendships with some of them, which goes a long way. I mean, these people will like drop what they're doing and just come in and help out, you know, at just a phone call. I never thought I'd have a relationship with some great podcasters and be able to really foster my creativity through different kinds of channels. Don't cry. And it's just, I think it's such a strong medium and a medium that resonates with practitioners, with marketers these days. I think it's just the way to go. I'm not sure still why vendors aren't double downing on this as a way to generate demand, build a brand, connect with buyers.
The ROI is not going to really be there, you know, but if you develop that from a vendor side, if you develop that credibility and that legitimacy, and it is the engine, like we said, right? I can drop into any major metro in this country, and you want a round table, I probably have people on the Rolodex. And this is not something, and it's not something that you exploit, it's because you actually know those people, and you invite them into your life, and you have these conversations.
Dude, George Camille's a star in Canada now.
Yeah,
straight up.
Yeah, I'm strangely big in Canada.
No, let's just say.
But what we're going to see, though, is we're going to see the vendors that don't believe in content, they're going to lose in the long term. Because the people that do invest in content, they're going to take over the game.
And practical content, because you've been doing practical content too, not just theory and you know subject matter expertise, but like how the hell do you do it? Let's break it down. Let's be raw. Let's be vulnerable. I think those are the folks that are going to win these days.
Absolutely.
The vendors that want to get out of their own way will be the ones that will benefit from this, and that's we're a long way away from that. You live this every day, but they're starting to listen.
Yeah,
right?
it's getting better.
It's getting better,
better,
and change has to be made not just on gender and equality, but just the way that we treat our buyers. It's
just human beings.
Like humanize it. It irks me.
Simplify and humanize.
Simply.
That's what we don't do enough of in this industry. So that's.
Let me ask you all something. I'll throw a question out there. When you all started your shows, did you all pause and ask yourself, where can I go for a resource to find out how much to charge sponsors, where to get templates to give to those sponsors, what microphone should I be using, what lighting should I be using? You notice that there's no sort of resource that people can go to where if you want to start a podcast, just a recommended list of things. Like, for example, in the film and entertainment industry, we have sites where we can go and just get, sample contracts for hiring a cinematographer, or, how much to charge for this or how much to charge for that. But there's nothing really in the podcast world for that. And you kind of have to rely on someone here. Like, I want to say that the most common DM I get is, what lighting would you recommend? Or what microphone would you recommend? And because there's really nothing out there. I think that's the most common thing is like, hey, this company wants to sponsor my show. How much should I charge them? And there's really no resource out there for people where you can say, okay, I have this number of followers. You have Social Blue Book. I don't know if you guys have seen that. There's Social Blue Book. So you know how there's the Blue Book for cars? There's also a social media Blue Book where you connect your profiles. Sorry, I'm a full welcome. Just mundane.
So mad I didn't know about that.
So it's Social Media Blue Book, and what you do is you'll connect your social media profiles, and it will give you a recommended amount to charge per video for sponsorships.
And none of us know this. You need to come out with this.
Well, I was going to say, like, I was thinking this, while we were all talking, it's, because I know that the sponsorship amounts are all over the board depending on the kind of show you have and the number of followers. And there's so many decisions that get put into that. I'm wondering if, that would be helpful to have a resource like that.
How about we do it now? Quick fire. Let's talk about the resources. And this could be the resource.
So Social Media Blue Book is a great time.
All right.
Cyberpod world.
Yeah, Cyberpod.
Yeah.
Well,
Eventually.
coming soon.
Yeah.
So we do have Cyber Creator Con that we're doing in Austin as a part of the Cyber Marketing Society conference that happens every year. And the session that I will be teaching is the business of being a content creator in the cybersecurity space, because I see these young creators, they have great followings, but they don't know the value that they have yet. Believe it or not, like if you're able to connect a single buyer to a brand, that's potentially tens, hundreds, if not $1 million deal that could happen. And if you're getting paid on CPM, like $15 CPM, you're getting destroyed in this equation. The value is not there for the creator. So I do it all the time and ad hoc, but I'll be definitely teaching that at the.
So you're going to create like a workshop.
Yeah, it's going to be a little workshop. I'm going to just I'm going to give my whole playbook because I had to figure it out on my own.
Yeah, very few people talk about that. And so I think that's incredibly valuable. That's a great idea.
Yeah, last year at Cyber Marketing Society, we also put on a workshop on how to start a podcast. What are the questions you need to ask? We had a list of audio gear that you can get.
Yep.
Like if
We
you're
got a
not
worksheet.
sure, just check off one of these, keep it moving. Same for podcasting platforms. That's a big decision. Which platform am I going to use? We created this is worksheet.
I forgot about the worksheet.
Yeah.
We need to give everybody a worksheet.
hackervalley.com/worksheet.
Oh, snap. there you go.
Everybody's Googling now.
Yeah.
It's so cryptic. I would say my favorite resource, I'm not very technically inclined. In fact, I think I have probably one of the shittiest mics you can have. But I say that I love my tools. I love my social media management tool. I love my automated AI script editing tool.
Yeah.
I love all those tools that make my post-production life easier.
And I would say like template, right? We have a rough structure to the interview. So when we have a guest coming on, I can WhatsApp this person's coming and here's like the list of placeholders for the questions. So we know how we're going to alternate, and that has helped editing time go down because I know exactly where the breaks are and stuff like that. So we also have that for social imagery. It's just like get it as tight as possible so you're not having to like sort of like
I would say
the stew every
on
time.
that too, like, so when we do have guests on, like one thing, like I joke about a lot of this like earlier in the episode, but the reality is I put in a ton of research, and so does George. If we have a guest coming on, I will look at you as if you're a bad actor or a criminal I'm trying to figure out. I'm gonna look at what you published, I'm gonna look at what you're about, I'm gonna look at your career profile. Like, I want to roll into that thing prepared. And I think the key to it, from my standpoint, I'm not like, George is like the executive producer. If we were to have someone with that title, like he handles all the things and does all the work. I just like show up and like stay sober enough to talk.
At least you're
I'll admit it, dude.
There's
I'll
so
admit
much
it.
synchronicity.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But like, the fact is, like, I emulate a lot of my favorite podcasts. Like, I'm big into the comedy podcasts. Like, I love Your Mom's House. I think like Tom, Christina are great. Like Joe, whatever. Like, people have their opinions on Rogan, but I think I've been watching his show for almost 10 years now. I love the guy. It's the same type of energy. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna research this thing. I've done the Toastmasters thing. I know how to do public speaking. It's all storytelling. Storytelling with questions, and that's it. But the research is what adds the value proposition to the thing. And if your target audience for us is industry folks, we are industry people doing a show for industry people. We want to make it relevant for that audience. So if we have a VC on, it's going to be a different conversation than if we have an Erica on, or if we have a Chris on, right? The perspectives are going to be different, but we want the same audience to walk home with value. And that diversification of value, I think, is what creates that consistent audience growth.
And you make a good point. You can't be a good writer if you don't read. Same with podcasting. You can't just say like, I want to create a podcast. And I've listened to a ton, and I would start to learn like, oh, I need that break in the middle of the bare knuckles portion, the brass tacks, not because it's convenient, but because it's hard to listen uninterrupted for a long period of time. People just sort of naturally tune out. So you create that audio break just to like recalibrate the attention and come out. And those are just like things I picked up on because I'm listening to podcasts all the time, and different interview techniques. And also
You are a one-man book club too. Like, let's be real.
Okay. But I also got to do the really hard and unbearable task of listening to myself all the time. And I'm like, oh, I say sorta, kinda, and I had to like relearn how to phrase things.
Yeah. So I produce everything myself, and I atomize a lot, like my podcast, to a lot of different pieces of content. And I wanted to find a tool that would let me do that fast and at scale. Descript, oh my word, gives me the transcript, gives me the studio sound, gives me the option to create the video trailers.
If they want to talk to CyberPod World about sponsorship.
That's how you got the captioning in the episodes, right?
Yeah, that's how I got the captioning,
awesome.
the word level animation. You know, I didn't, at the beginning, didn't want to, focus on high value production. After 50 episodes, I knew I needed to kind of switch things up. That's when I made the decision. After a year and a half of podcasting, I was like, level up just a little bit, but do it consistently. Produce it yourself, see if it works, and then figure out, outsourcing production. Yeah.
We've played with format a little bit just to like tweak it, just to also make it interesting for ourselves.
I think we podcasted on every day of the week, so.
Yeah, Descript and I need to talk to you about that because Descript and I.
Meryl, fix it. Yep.
Yeah. And you just mentioned some things that Descript does that we actually didn't even know. We're
we're
looking at each other like
it's coming out with
toggle
stuff
tab.
every day.
Click that,
Every
gives
day.
you a lot of great
I'm like,
things.
A lot of product.
yeah, I want to kick that software's ass.
It kicks her ass, that's why.
Yeah.
All right, so we have like 10 minutes left. I want to see if the audience has questions for us. before we sign off today. Kristen.
So, thank you all. This is awesome. My question is, how do you maintain your voice when the pressure that you get as a podcaster is always to tamp your voice down or to neutralize or to spread it out, make it less whatever?
Erica just tells people to fuck off.
Oh, that's, I
Yeah.
was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the
Yeah, I think I've gotten a couple angry DMs, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, but that was just the tone that was going to take. We knew it was going to be hot, or we knew whatever, but that's just the way it is. And they're like, well, I disagree, and I'm a CRO with it. I'm like, you are welcome to disagree, but like we're pretty honest. This is bare knuckles and brass tacks. This is what we do. Sorry, not sorry.
But I think the bigger question too is like, whose pressure are you worried about, right? Like for me, it's the employer, right? So like I have like my chief strategy officer is our head of comms, and we have our CEO, and I'm my CIO, right? I talk to them about it like in advance, and they know like I have the show, I do the thing. They occasionally listen to it, they like it. But the thing is, you have to own who you are. Yeah. They know I'm a little bit rough around the edges, but like I'm half decent at my job. I haven't been fired yet. It's been 2 years, sweet. But like, because of that, I can be honest about myself, and because I didn't hide it from them,
Yeah.
they're supportive of it. Anyone else outside of that, as Erica has very wonderfully said, they can go fuck themselves. Who
Yes.
cares?
I actually get death threats, anonymous death threats, because I've been told that I attack middle-aged white men, and that's what they hear in some of the episodes. I talk about the toxicity and that the gender gap. Obviously you've heard me talk about the gender gap, and people tell me that we attack men, and they don't come at Meryl, but they seem to come they're comfortable telling me things. But as far as like an employer perspective, if I'm interviewing, it's the first thing I tell the recruiter. If this is an issue, we cannot have this conversation. Now I'm self-employed, so it doesn't matter, but I still have to be careful not to offend or encroach on anybody's beliefs or what they don't believe in. People are gonna hate trolls.
Yeah, I think there was this point where my show kind of became known as, a very controversial topics. Like, so when I published Playing with Fire, that was where I hacked 30 APIs in less than a week, accessing healthcare records. And I got contacted by the Office of the Inspector General for Health and Human Services. And 2 congressmen actually pulled my report up and referenced the blog about it. And it actually affected public policy. So I feel like people kind of expected that of my show at some point, where, oh, she's going to hack this bank or she's going to hack that. And it just was a controversial, I just became controversial in that sense with vulnerability research and what I published. And I didn't care. I felt like, this is me. I'm going to fly my freak flag. I'm going to talk about how vulnerable, connected cars are. I'm going to talk about how vulnerable our banks are. And I mean, I've hacked banks through their mobile app on the show live, if you look at some of the archives. And so, it's just, to me, companies don't do anything about their vulnerabilities until you air their dirty laundry.
Right.
And those are typically, historically, where you see most of the problems.
Yeah, you're gonna piss someone off no matter what you do.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah.
So if it's working, if it's landing with who you wanted it to land with,
Yeah.
keep going.
Yep.
But, that one episode got me 105,000 more followers. But it's so, I mean, it's like the more controversial the content,
Yeah.
but it's going to also boost your subscriber count. It's going to also,
It'll bring the right people to you, basically.
On the other side of that, we did We Are Here, which was about underrepresented voices in cybersecurity. And the first time we did that, we did it within Hacker Valley Studio, which is our main flagship show. We lost 25% of our followers. And then, as gluttons of punishment, we did it again later that year, and we lost another 25%. And I mean, that's tough. As someone that leverages their podcast for business to put food on the table for their family, losing that many followers and subscribers because you wanted to highlight and champion like other voices, I think is kind of ridiculous. And I had a real struggle with it, because obviously you want to say the right thing, you want to do all the right things, but seeing that loss still hurts, like no matter what. Even though those aren't the people that you want to be a part of your followership anyways, it still sucks. But then you work through the process and you say, you know what, I'm going to continue to do the right stuff, and the right people will be in the right room. And that's why I ended up finding it.
Thank you to the panel for coming. A round of applause. This is awesome.